So maybe there's nothing really wrong with the fact that he sold his soul for £6 million. But you're welcome to Sunrise.
Thank you very much.
I'll tell you what. I went to Cafe des Amis to get a chocolate croissant, and then as I was waiting for my croissant, I saw your books on the shelf.
Yes.
So and title, How I Sold My Soul. I'm passionate about soul winning, So yes, I made a mental note to pick up the book later to make sure I get a copy for myself. And then, like my English teacher mistakenly said, ho and below, I got a copy 2 days ago. You're welcome again to Sunrise. Fantastic book.
Thank you for having me.
Business and Financial Times reviewed this, and this is just how they describe your book. How I Sold My Soul is breathtakingly original, skillfully structured, and a shining beacon of African literature that will once again put Ghana on the international market for producing talented authors. That's what you are. Congratulations. Is this your first book?
Yeah, this is definitely my first book.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And it says that Our Father's House published this?
Yes. Our Father's House is my registered company because ultimately what I'm trying to do is build God's spiritual house by using a variety of platforms, including books, inspirational messages, and then eventually perhaps have a program on TV called Our Father's House.
I see. So why write this book? You're a Christian, obviously.
Yeah. I'm definitely a Christian.
Message. I mean, why write this book? What message you try putting across?
Because ultimately, I think what's the point of gaining the whole world and losing your soul? Because ultimately, the soul is the only thing that will take us to eternity. So building up spiritual currency as much as possible is what we need to do to last us this life and to have our dream of dreams in eternity, which is otherwise known as heaven. So it's the most valuable thing we possess. So I thought I'd structure it in this book. And I got the concept a couple of years ago when I met a young man who told me he sold his soul. So I always knew I was going to write.
So it wasn't you. As I'm thinking,
no, it certainly wasn't
I'm sure
me.
The author sold her soul to the devil, or that you were part of the Illuminati, that occult group you tell us about in your book. But it wasn't you. Okay.
It wasn't me. And if you read further about the Illuminati, it's a very, very elect group.
Yes.
I mean, you practically have to be born into the Illuminati.
Right.
And, it's like, I think select 10 to 15 families in this world are even eligible, and their offsprings are even eligible to be part of this group. And the influence my character gets, and his name is Mr. Man, is that he just becomes a member of the Illuminati, and he doesn't have to necessarily be born into the Illuminati. But the title of the book is essentially just to catch people's attention and just to make them aware that the most valuable thing that they have is a soul. I mean, some of the book is quite dark, and it's really told in the world standard sort of way, but I really think if you're going to engage people in the 21st century, you have to do that in a way that they understand, with a character that they understand. And ultimately, I leave it for the reader to make of the story what they will in terms of Mr. Man's life, but not necessarily a judgment call as to whether he's good or bad. It's just his story.
Yes. So I want to read a portion of this book on the 32nd page, and this is the paragraph. The common theme in conspiracy theories about a new world order is that a secretive power elite with a globalist agenda is conspiring to eventually rule the world through an authoritarian world government which replaces sovereign nation states and an all-encompassing propaganda that ideologizes its establishment as the culmination of history's progress. I straight away linked this to the end times, to the Antichrist.
Yeah, of course. And writing this book was almost a thesis to a certain extent, particularly when I got to the latter chapters, which deals with his spiritual side, when he enters a coma and he's having this spiritual encounter, and you don't know if he's dead. I mean, you don't know if he's having a real spiritual encounter, if he's imagining it or anything. And New World Orders is not something I've ever believed in, but the more and more I researched about the Illuminati, and the more I had authority with the Bible and authority with all the information I was finding. So apart from the chapter you just read, it's not as academic as it might seem. It's very much a story told through the eyes of a man. So I hope you can get it as well.
Okay, so, chapter 9, you're talking about the breeders.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking, I just hope this is not real. I hope this is not a true story. Tell us about the breeders.
The Breeders is quite a disturbing chapter in the book, which
It is.
talks about very, very rich people in England, and particularly in a place called Devon, who carry out cannibalistic ritual acts, and they basically get women to breed babies for their consumption, which is, something that's horrific.
Yeah.
But I wrote about this.
Basically for human sacrifice.
Human sacrifices,
Yeah.
basically, and they do it on 5-piece cutlery sets. But I wrote about this chapter because I'd seen a woman on Trinity Broadcast Network, TBN, and she was basically talking about how she rescued such women, and how sometimes they'll be reprogrammed, etc. And these acts were carried out against them, where year after year they breed these babies for a certain amount of money, and people don't know these things go on. But I just thought it would be quite an interesting chapter because Mr. Mann is a lawyer, and he gets involved in very sort of high-end cases. And one particular case is he's defending a country club, and he happens to defend them successfully. So, I mean, the chapters vary, but I really do hope you'll find it a good read.
Yes, it is good to read. And, again, Mr. Mann, like you said, was supposed to defend this country club, so that the Miss Stuffed would not have her book published.
Yeah.
Otherwise, all their secrets would be out. But you reveal so much in this book. I was wondering, didn't you meet any stiff opposition before publishing this?
No, but I mean, I've actually only published it 2-3 weeks ago. So people are reading it still, and I have a lot of hopes for this book. I want to take it to Hollywood ultimately, because I think this could be a film.
It's there already. I see it there.
Yeah. So I mean, that's my ultimate aim. So I've already started sending it out, because what I ultimately want to do with this book is to make it into a film, and to make people remember the fact that the soul is the only thing that will last us for eternity, and it's so important to build up spiritual currency just so that we can have a peaceful time on this earth and peaceful time in the afterlife, because it's not worth it otherwise.
Did you weave yourself into the story?
I weave myself in so many ways into the story.
Having the fun of your life in Ghana.
Yeah, it's the beauty about being a writer. I think
Yeah.
you can just put yourself in as many different spots, because I think it's hard to write a story if you can't identify with all the characters. So sometimes I did weave myself, and there's lots of little clues in the book, like the people who are living in sin, their names are spelled backwards. Like Heaven is spelled Navia.
Yeah, Navia. Okay.
Navia,
Yeah.
and Shiana. Oh, Annalise is spelled Shiana, and lots of other clues, because I really want people to, just analyze the book and to just do something very different with this book.
Very daring things you mentioned here. You're talking about the Freemasons. Okay, Mr. Mann, not you. Talking about the Freemasons. He says, we were taught that the first Freemason was Tubal Cain,
Yes.
descendant from the line of Cain in the Bible, Cain who killed his brother Abel. And we also learnt about another Mason called Nimrod that I've read about, one of the founders of Masonry. Nimrod, from the Hebrew verb marad, means rebel. A lot of research he had to do here. He's depicted in the Bible as both a man of power in the earth and a mighty hunter, rebellious towards God. He figures in many legends outside the Bible as being the founder of Babylon and architect of the Tower of Babel. This Confucian, the religion that sprang up around Nimrod and his queen Semiramis, became the prototype for virtually all cults. And again, it was very easy to read between the lines, because after you read such a book, you easily trace dots to everything, and you just might end up reading meaning into nothing at all. But there's one thing you send across which is quite clear, and it's the fact that all of these are against Christianity.
It is against Christianity, and the impression I try and leave in the book is that we can take all these oaths and we can have all these sort of like secret societies, etc. But ultimately, when you have secret societies, when you have secret societies, they're only minor revelations of the universe. People are always trying to get their source from something, but the ultimate source is God, and that's what I'm trying to do with this book.
So It's out already because I saw copies of your book of the Des Amis Cafe.
Yeah, Des Amis, Melting Moments, On the Street.
Going for how much?
It's going for 20 CDs. So it's not a bad price to pay for a manual on how to,
It really is
ensure
worth-
that you
worth
know
it.
you build your spiritual currency.
But you must be widely, traveled because, I mean, today you're in Ghana, you're in Italy, you're, all over the world.
Yeah, with this book, Mr. Man, when he enters his coma, goes with his guide to lots of different locations. But the irony is, I haven't actually visited many of these places, but my parents go on a lot of cruises. And every time my mum would come back, she'd tell me about these locations like Black Tindari in Sicily.
Yes.
And there's a chapter dedicated to Black Madonna of Tindari. So just hearing about it and then researching further about it, I was able to write about these places. And it just encourages anybody who hasn't traveled much to just still, research about places they'd like to visit and envisage it. And then one day, you'll eventually go there, like hopefully I'll eventually go to these places that I've written about and never been to.
I'm going to wrap up now, but on this note, when Mr. Man, got into a coma and then, his guide was taking him through wherever it is they went, I found one very interesting thing, and it was that they were, unnoticeable to people around them wherever they went. However, animals, especially dogs, seemed to sense their presence. You think this is something real of it? Stories like that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that animals have a lot of sixth sense. So it was just to leave on the reader that they were having this spiritual encounter, because I want the reader to think, are they really having a spiritual encounter? Is he dreaming? Is he hallucinating? And there's lots of clues that could go either way. So I think that's why, I particularly do that. But ultimately, I mean, towards the end of the book, his spiritual journey, I think, is so much more powerful than his actual life, because even though his life is engaging, because he's rich, he has more money, he has it all, and he really utilizes it, and you can really enter a world that, that is so different. His spiritual encounter is what's the most powerful, and ultimately, like Jacob in the Bible, Jacob wrestling with God, I think it's Genesis chapter 32. I wanted my character, Mr. Man, to be brought to his place of deliverance, and I wanted him to wrestle with his nature, wrestle with God, and then to make a passionate speech at the end of his life to try and win back his soul. So as a reader, you're left wondering where his soul ends up. But I really do hope you get the book, How I Sold My Soul, and I'm very passionate about it and very passionate about soul winning for our Father's house.
It is a good book, I must say. And I'm almost done reading it. So I'll do it while Eric handles this interview with the DVLA, which is coming up next. I've been talking to Amanda Akwa-Clinton. She's authored this beautiful masterpiece, How I Sold My Soul, A Man's Journey. It's a must read. Okay, now you don't even have to be a Christian to read this. If you care about your soul and where you will end up after you die, you must read this book, How I Sold My Soul, A Man's Journey. Just 20 Ghana cedis. Some may say 25 or 30. It's okay. Pay it anyway. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Awesome. You're watching Sunrise. Some health tidbits back shortly.